Good evening and welcome to the December 14th, 2023 meeting of the Cohasset Conservation Commission. I'm Tom Bell, Chair of the Conservation Commission, and will be running tonight's meeting as we implement the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act and the Cohasset Stormwater Management and Wetland Protection Bylaws. We'll be operating tonight's meeting using the Zoom platform and ask the public who wish to speak to enter your questions, comments, or concern in the chat box. Please include your name and address. Only those who include the name and address will be recognized. There are no public hearings scheduled for this evening, and all items on the agenda are for business administrative discussions only. However, if you have joined us and want to listen in or even comment, of course, this is a public meeting and you are free to do so. Present this evening on behalf of the Conservation Commission are our Conservation Administrator, Angela Giso, and the town's Conservation Agent, Charlotte Pechtel. I'll now take a roll call of the Conservation Commissioners and Associate Commissioners. Please respond by repeating your name and saying present. Will Ashton.
Will Ashton, present.
Kathy Berrigan.
Kathy Berrigan, present.
Erica Eisenhower is not present. Chris McIntyre.
Chris McIntyre, present.
Chris McFarland.
Chris McFarland, present.
Associate Commissioners Sanjay Fernando. You're muted, Sanjay.
Oh, Sanjay Fernando, present.
Thanks. And Valeria Romano is not with us this evening yet. Tonight we have a quorum, though we're not going to need it, I guess, to because we're not going to hold any votes, but we have a quorum of what, 5? We'll be taking all votes via roll call vote with each commissioner answering yea, nay, or abstain. So with that said, Charlotte, why don't you tell us, give an opening statement and what the agenda is for tonight.
Sure. So on the agenda, we have pretty much updating a lot of our permit conditions and templates, and then briefly discussing some updates on the violation tracker and any potential strategies we want to implement. And then we also have a discussion, if we want to have it, for certificates of compliance, just our review workflow of how we could make the meetings go better or more quickly, or either. And then a submission checklist that we've been working on, and I've kind of updated it to try and make it a little bit easier to read. And then we have a discussion for kind of starting to brainstorm some of our rules and regulations. I've kind of been picking at the regulations slowly, but I figured some of these sections that I listed and some other sections that we might find pertinent tonight, we could definitely start breaking those down of how we want to improve them, make them better to, better protect the resources and buffer zones. So with that, do you want me to just start going through the list, Tom?
Yeah, I think so. Let's get right into it.
So I know a lot of you have seen this already, but my one comment for the orders of condition template is it's very long, and I obviously just probably changed the length of it a considerable amount. So do you want me to kind of just go through it condition by condition, or did everyone kind of read it? And do you guys have some overall comments of how maybe we could organize this, or if you guys are satisfied, we can vote to approve it? I think a vote couldn't hurt. I don't know if we necessarily have to, but we could just, for the record, we could just vote on each of our templates tonight.
So commissioners, can you, each of you state how closely you've read this, and that'll give us some notion of how deeply we need to read it tonight, or if there are specific issues that you are focused on. I'd like to hear those too. So that'll speed up the process here. Hopefully you've done your homework. If not, we can find some happy medium between reading every word and every read edit. And so in any case, Kathy, have you had a chance to review this fairly closely, or?
Yes, I have reviewed it, and I didn't read every single word of all the documents, but I did read all of the edits in the red and the things that were highlighted and a few other things in between. So I would say I'm familiar with the items that have been changed or.
Okay, I would say the same about myself, that I can't say I've read every word, but I have read through these a couple of times, and each time I go through, I pick up some little tweaky thing, but in general, I think I'm relatively well familiar with it. Chris McIntyre, have you had a chance to delve into this?
I've looked at it probably less so than both of you, but I have scrolled through it and looked at the gist of the changes, but I was hoping to get you know, the bigger, hoping to review the bigger items here.
Yep. Chris McFarland, I know I see your edits in there, so I know that you've been poring over it probably more so than I have.
Those are my edits.
Oh, I thought I saw something, this goes back a ways.
Oh,
Yeah, we've been looking at this one for a while.
Yeah.
okay.
Oh, yeah, yeah. This just
Well,
didn't pop up a week ago.
I don't even remember all my edits, but yeah, so
Okay, so you think you're relatively familiar with,
yes. Yeah.
okay. Will, what can you tell us about your familiarity with the material?
I'd say about the same as Chris McIntyre. Like I looked at it all, but not too in depth.
Okay, that
Okay.
sounds good. Sanjay, have you had a look at it?
I think I've seen this before. I was just in office and it looks like the only one I can see is the July version.
In
Sure.
the December 14th folder, do you have access to that in OneDrive?
I don't think I have
I'm
access
also
to that
sharing this-
folder.
Which one?
Sanjay, it's
I don't think I have
buried-
access to that
it's
folder.
buried fairly deep in there, and even I had trouble sort of tracking.
Sorry.
To call Charlotte to say, where do I need to go? So if you didn't see it right off the bat, I'm not surprised because it
Sorry. So yeah,
took a little bit digging.
if you guys want me to organize these folders, or simply I can. So this is the December 14th folder that I did. So I have, if you guys want to look at this on your own screens too, while I'm pulling up each document, I tried to put each item in a folder and then the document is in here to look at. You should have, if you don't have editing access, I can fix that, but I can make the edits live, I can pull up the document again, but this is where everything is. And then this folder is where our rules and regulations are, our bylaws, and then some supplemental plant lists, and then our pool BMPs. So none of these documents were editing. It's just, these are just here for reference while we look at the edits. But if it's helpful, I could just quickly kind of get like a yay or a nay, not voting, but just like everyone good on this one, everyone good on this one, and kind of just try to quickly go through each one. A lot of these are pretty much existing from the previous template that the commission had already approved years ago. So if anybody wants to remove anything, or if anything seems repetitive or unclear, maybe we can just speak up quickly. I can fix it and then we can go on to the next condition. Does that sound fair?
Charlotte, just to be clear, that anything in red is recent. So it's,
Yes.
so anything in black has already been approved.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's some other colors in here too.
And yeah, any other colors are made by other parties. So
Right.
like town council had originally made some edits in a different color probably. And then Tom, I think your changes also showed up in blue. So anytime it's a different user, it becomes a different color.
Right.
But the edits that I previously made were also from previous discussions that we had in other meetings, like earlier this year and last year. So these aren't just all my specific edits. These are from previous commissioner comments as well. So I guess this
So
first.
I would suggest, Charlotte, that
Yep.
we try to kind of skip the
Yeah.
really
Okay, and just look at the edits.
Well, let's look at substance and not worry about grammar and word usage and things like that. Let's really get to the meat of it and
Okay.
see where we're making substantive changes that may impact our behavior and how our applicants experience the meetings and their requirements. So,
Okay.
yeah, and maybe you don't even need to start at the top. Maybe there-
These first three conditions can be skipped. These are just more, minor edits.
Yeah.
This one, it's pretty much just rewording the clarity that the changes have to come back to us in writing, and kind of just tried to make it a little clearer. This one was kind of just emphasizing that all contractors and subcontractors are responsible. I mean, ultimately it's the applicant's responsibility, but to kind of emphasize that it's not just the general contractor, it's the landscapers, it's, you know, anybody else who comes to the scene. So kind of just expanding on this a little bit. Did anyone have any issues with this?
I would just say that that's a really good thing, that we encourage our applicants and their representatives to have a copy of order of conditions and anything we issue on site, and to confirm that all subcontractors have a copy of it. We can't, there's no way of forcing them to read it, but and maybe we'd even add some sort of affidavit that everybody has to sign that, yes, I've received a copy. And so we don't come back with, so nobody comes back with the excuse the dog ate my homework, like we've seen in some of these cases. Oh, well, it was the such and such a contractor and they're the ones that screwed up. Well, you know, as you say, ultimately it's the applicant that is responsible to carry out our orders of conditions, et cetera. And I'd feel comfortable seeing that everybody who ever worked on the site, at least, you know, each company has signed off that, yes, we have read and understand the orders of conditions, and we will direct our employees to respect those. So maybe we need a separate, maybe we need that affidavit built in here, and so that we've got a paper trail.
I can ask town council about that, but I think a simple, like if I made like a, outside of the order, if I just made a simple cover sheet when I send the orders of condition, and I was actually going to make an inspection sheet. I added it in a condition here, but I don't know if it's easier to just put it as a cover sheet and issue it with an order of conditions, and then the applicant needs to sign the cover sheet acknowledgement and then have all their contractors sign. And then when I do a pre-construction meeting, I could collect that paperwork, I guess.
That's
That could
perfect.
be something we could
That's
do.
all. That's all that's necessary, I think. It's just to make sure that everybody from, you know, the general contractor to the dog walker who's
Yeah,
has signed off on this, and so no one has an excuse to say
Yeah.
we didn't know.
yeah.
A lot of this will boil down to the 50-foot, right? I mean, that's where most of the trouble happens.
Well, it can also happen with a stormwater permit, you know.
Yeah.
You know, it can happen anywhere in the process, I think.
So
Okay.
for SWIP, you know, the SWIP controls are pretty well defined in the plans, but the 50-foot may not always be in there. Would it be possible maybe to have on some of these projects where they're encroaching or nearby the 50-foot, that they demarcate that or something? Would that be?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I don't know if that sounds familiar. Maybe I put something in this template. We can keep, let me make a
Okay.
note of that and we'll scroll down here. But I guess, does anyone have issues with this language, or are we good here?
Good.
Because okay.
I don't
And
think we
then-
have time to read.
yeah.
I don't think we have
I
time
just had
to
a-
read
just a-
every word of the language. That's kind of the responsibility of the commissioners to, if they think they need to read every word, they should do it. But if we were to recite every word that's
Yeah.
in red in all these documents, we'll be here till tomorrow.
Yeah,
So again,
Just to
your summary and the intent, I think, are what we need to focus on. And then before
Okay.
we vote on it, after hearing that summary and a discussion about each of the changed items, then it's the responsibility of commissioners to go back to the ones that they are uncertain about, read it, and in the next round, when we probably do vote on these, that's when they could raise any specific issues.
okay. So these ones were merely just rewritten from the previous version. It's really condition 28
just a quick question, like
Yeah.
I've never seen this before. Like, is this like the standard template for the condition, or is this going into the bylaws?
This is going
I
into
just read the
every,
bylaws, but-
oh, sorry, Sanjay. Yeah, this is our order of conditions, special conditions template. So whenever we vote to issue an order of conditions, we say with our standard template and the following any additional conditions. So this template has kind of been around honestly, I think for the last like 20 something years, because I've seen from the original agent Paul Shea have a basic template, and it's just been expanded upon ever since. So anytime we issue an order of conditions, just an order of conditions, we have separate templates for all the different types of permits met tonight, hopefully. So this is just for like a notice of intent when we issue an order of conditions. So every order will have this template, and then any additional conditions will add to it as part of each project.
So this template should reflect our regulations and bylaws, but we're not changing any regulations and bylaws here. Is that
Correct. Yeah. And so a lot of these conditions are kind of reflections of our regulations, and they're also just additional notes to be aware of during construction and after construction. And then the thing about the order of conditions is after 10 days, it's final when it's upon issue, the date of issuance. So these conditions are final. So unless somebody appeals it or disputes it, everyone has to follow what it says in this document. So there's quite a lot of conditions to go through. Luckily, not every condition applies to every project, but we put it here in writing just to make sure we have this kind of security net for ourselves when we're evaluating compliance. So yeah, this template's been around for a while. It's definitely been modified throughout the years by, you know, your predecessors, my predecessor. So
Charlotte, I think Sanjay brings up an important question, really, maybe inadvertently, but have you already or plan to run these templates by council so that they can cross-check them against our bylaws and regulations to make sure that we aren't putting things in our templates that are
so council has
not consistent with our bylaws and regulations.
council's looked at earlier versions. So this most current version, council has not reviewed it. If we wanted to, let's just say vote and approve it tonight, we could say upon further discussion with town council, or unless we want to table it. But if you guys are able to tonight, I'd love to get your input on any of these edits in red. Again, a lot of these conditions were existing. So like, again, I just rewrote these, and then a lot of these are, you know, again, just existing, them. So I would say with the content ones, Tom, this is one that we added. So, and you added this one in terms of, well, we modified it. We added Little Harbor and impaired water bodies. So this one originally just had language about ACECs. So we added impaired water bodies like the Gulf and Little Harbor shall have additional protections. So that's kind of expanding our original template a bit. And then this one, we talk about it all the time, but it's not in our regulations, and we don't have a condition for it that we want plants to be from our native species lists. So this was a very popular request to add from multiple commissioners. So I would say, does anyone have an issue with this one in particular with being added to the template?
I think that, like, Tom hit it on the head though, like, I just wasn't sure, like, how much can we assert in our order of conditions without going over what our bylaws allow us to do? Like, I assume it's fine, like, we could have, like, that's why I wasn't sure what the line is.
My personal opinion, and obviously I'm not town council, I think all of these are within our jurisdiction because they're all geared towards protecting the buffer zones in the resource area and enforcing the approved plans. But I definitely think that we should send this to town council one last time. But I would definitely want to do that after commissioners have given all their final edits, because, you know, I've sent this to them like 3 times. So I guess I can just slowly scroll through this. Do you want me to just do that? Because I know we want to get to the other items. And if anybody sees any red flags, then I can pull it up. But a lot of these are
Charlotte, again, I would say let's focus on the ones that are really substantive. And
okay.
We have made a lot of changes from should to shall.
Yeah.
In general, I mean, there's a legal distinction there where we're no longer advising people that, yeah, you ought to do it. We're telling them you have to do it.
Yeah.
And those are really definitive statements.
Yeah.
There's no wiggle room. Should and must and stuff like that have been removed. and
Okay.
shall has been substituted in a lot of places here.
So-
we were sort of wobbly, I thought, in a lot of places. And
Yeah, so a lot of the condition language has been revised from should to shall. This is one of the conditions that we're starting to see more and more of these projects. So I know this condition is long, but this was kind of taken from other towns, from the Wetlands Protection Act, from the DEP replication guidelines, and from previous wetland scientist mitigation memos and reports. So this condition is not applicable to every project. In fact, it's probably not applicable to most projects unless there is a required, obviously, BVW replication or restoration, especially if this notice of intent was filed after the fact as a result of a violation. So in kind of looking through these bullets, I know this is very long, so I'm happy to take any input on condensing it, but does any of this kind of stick out that might need further review? And again, the 75%, the 3 consecutive years, all of that is pretty consistent with the DEP wetlands replication standards. And I just applied it to any restoration or mitigation work in a buffer zone anywhere. So this is really for projects that are focusing on that type of work. Unfortunately, we're probably not going to see this as much, but it's one of those conditions that's only applicable if it needs to be.
Charlotte,
Um,
is the Massachusetts DEP a more conservative
Mm.
restoration than, say, the Army Corps of Engineers or someone like that? I'm just wondering, are we going with the best?
Yeah.
on
That's a
this?
good question. I didn't look at Army Corps. I just went with the BVW replication. DEP has been slowly making their guidelines and policies stricter in compliance with federal stuff. So for delineation, for example, they just updated the BVW delineation handbook to be more consistent with the feds. They're slowly, as of 2022, they're slowly working on updating the stormwater standards to be more strict with the MS4 compliance. So I would say overall, the DEP replication may or may not be the strictest document out there. So there could be maybe stricter and higher expectations under Army Corps or other agencies. But right now, the current standard is 75% in 2 growing seasons. That's usually what a lot of restoration specialists follow, at least from what I've seen so far. But if we wanted to make the standard higher, it's a possibility for sure.
The one that jumps out at me is D, like, feels like we're gonna, like, that sounds expensive to get a qualified professional to monitor every year. like,
Yeah,
Seems like we're gonna keep, some wetland scientists fat and happy with
Oh, yeah.
fees,
yeah.
Good.
Yeah, from a
I
qualified
mean,
professional.
do we have to say qualified professional? I mean, we could request annual monitoring, but if it's a smaller project, shouldn't the property owner or citizen or a resident be able to do that on their own versus having to, hire a qualified professional?
I would say
I-
maybe for smaller projects.
I think,
Sure, yeah.
I think that if you are proposing a project that requires mitigation, you can afford to hire a scientist to come back out and check your plants. It'd only be a couple $100 compared to a lot of the other stuff that we require that's way more expensive.
Yeah, I'm not worried about how much it costs them. I'm worried about, the meager wetlands that we have left, and I think that's my goal anyways.
I think a visit by your wetland scientist or whoever it is less than an NOI cost to apply for.
Yeah, especially.
Right now, we're just saying
Yeah.
qualified professional, so that's kind of generalized language. We're not specifically saying a wetland scientist, because you could have like, any sort of potential ecologist or someone who specializes, like a botanist or someone who specializes in plants, arborist. especially with
They
like.
would already have one on the books because they would need one for
Yeah,
the NOI and the rest of their project anyways, so as long as they capture.
I think those are, do you guys know the pricing for these wetland scientists? So that, maybe we just got screwed on the pricing, but like, I don't think it was a couple $100 for us to pay our wetland scientists.
Yeah, it could
Well, I
be-
think for the revisit, I think is a site visit is a couple $100. If they're gonna do your whole study for you, it's probably a few thousand, but an additional site visit shouldn't be that much.
It could be expensive, and it could be a burden on the homeowner. However, when we're talking about working in the 50-foot buffer where we generally prohibit any sort of activity, we're actually relaxing the standard a little bit and allowing people to do things in the 50-foot buffer that they've never been allowed to do before. And I think we need to step carefully into that space and be assured that it's being done correctly. Otherwise, we have to revert back to no, you can't do anything there. And
Yeah,
so-
when you consider that they're getting all of our review time for free, then it's a bargain.
Yeah, really, really. But I mean, this isn't in general. I mean, this is really specifically for habitat and ecological restoration. And, you know, mitigation, of course, comes in when somebody's done something that they shouldn't have done. And so, or they're applying for something that we ordinarily wouldn't permit.
And there's a good reason for it because a lot of these mitigation projects fail and you know at rates greater than 50%. So if we're gonna allow something with the condition that they establish functional wetland, then we want to make sure that they establish a functional wetland. You know, and so it's like
One thought I just had, and something that might make it a little bit clearer for these types of projects, is mitigation is extremely general. So like we've seen on so many plans, they're saying, oh, we're going to put in mitigation planting somewhere. So like, I don't know if we want to put this heavy of a condition for just some basic enhancement projects, but like for actual restoration of restoring a buffer zone, restoring a wetland, or replicating a wetland, which I hope we would never have to see, but sometimes that may happen. Maybe we could take the words mitigation work out, and this could just apply to restoration and replication projects, because that is very much standard under the Wetlands Protection Act. To have all of this succeed, to put in the reporting, to have certified professionals look at it. So again, when you're paying for something to be restored or replicated, you have to spend all this money. But mitigation work, that could be like someone's taken out 400 square feet of lawn and putting in native plantings. So I don't know if we need to see all of this for a mitigation plan, but the counter argument to that is obviously if we're allowing stuff, I don't know if we want to do the tit for tat trade thing, but the mitigation plantings are often a trade for work in the buffer zones. So then would we want them to do this as part of that agreement? So I can kind of see it both ways with the mitigation work.
I think that's what I was getting kind of with, because I was thinking about that one.
Oh, Sanji, your sound went away. Hey, Sanji, I don't know if you can hear us, but we can't hear you.
Now he
Hey
froze.
guys, Valerio's here. I'm just dialing in. I just finished a zoning board hearing.
Hi,
Oh,
Valerio.
Yeah, welcome.
Thanks, guys.
Sanji, try again.
Were able to hear me, but I was just thinking about that. There was a property, I think, on Jerusalem Road where we asked for some trees to offset something they were doing, and that feels like a little bit overkill to ask, a professional to just look at the trees and see if they're there every year, which
Yeah,
I think falls in
it
that
might be.
mitigation
I mean, if
category.
it's as simple as that, where we're asking for one of our 2 trees for 1 tree cut, as long as the applicant is coming before us and asking before they remove a tree, that's one thing. When we get people that cut first and ask permission later, I'm less inclined to trust them. do it right. That's just my personal opinion, obviously, but
But I think we're going to check it in E. That's what I'm saying. Like E, you're going to check it at the end of to issue the certificate of compliance.
well, if we're talking about a fairly involved restoration where, you know, it might be a large property with a lot of invasives in the 50-foot buffer, I think that I would be uncomfortable letting the homeowner just go out there and start spraying Roundup around without having a plan or anybody checking on them that is going to sign off, and their professional reputation, maybe even their license, would be in jeopardy if they were to falsify information.
But I think we covered that on B.
No. How so? I don't see anything that's specifically in B that says that
You can't use herbicides on invasives in point B, 47B.
Say remove by hand, but
yeah. I guess maybe I'm anticipating a point where we relax even more. And in some circumstances, Phragmites removal, for some, Japanese knotweed, some of the things that are just going to own somebody's property and impinge on the wetland and crowd out native species, that's a more involved thing.
Or maybe in that one, I think you had referred to it earlier in the meeting, like maybe we just need a separate policy and plan for invasives, right?
I think we do.
Maybe for mitigation too.
Yeah, it depends on how involved it is. I mean, we've seen some mitigation plans that are really not much different from somebody coming and asking, can I remove a big stand of Phragmites or knotweed or whatever it is. So yeah, they sort of bleed into each other.
Format this like an RDA and apply different conditions. You know, like maybe under 47, you have 47A, you have whether or not you need, a qualified scientist for this. I mean, we're not going to want to do this for everyone, but
Like check blocks for each one of these instead of.
yeah, like if the agent can come and see if the trees are still alive versus if the wetland scientist needs to come and see if it's a successful wetland restoration or replication.
so
So
Maybe-
it seems like there needs to be some thresholds then if we're going to do that. You know what? How do you trigger going from, say, your landscape architect to a wetland scientist or whatever? I don't know that, or even from just a visit by our agent versus having a professional wetland scientist come in and sign off.
Well, like an RDA, we could just take it case by case, couldn't we?
Yeah, you could.
That's what I was gonna say is maybe keep it off of this standard condition and then we apply it subjectively to
Selective
each
invasives.
case. Yeah.
Well, there's a danger in that too, in that if we do start applying too many subjective approvals or plans here, then we open ourselves up to being criticized for maybe treating one person one way and another person another.
Yeah, and not just criticize, but litigation, right?
Yeah, right.
would it be
I mean,
best to
Charlie's
maybe,
earlier-
oh, go ahead.
Oh, your earlier suggestion of like, if it's restoration or replication, I would concur with everyone's opinion that all these are required. But if it's the mitigation, maybe it's a different checklist.
Well, again, the mitigation ones are usually the most complicated ones of all. in that sometimes they're triggered by a show cause hearing. And so we don't necessarily,
And typically they're more
necessarily dealing
subjective,
with
they are
someone
more
who's-
subjective, right?
who wants to do this, actually wants to mitigate anything. Those tend to be the kind of the toughest cases in some way.
There's maybe a way that I could like break this down to maybe be a little bit more general for mitigation, but then have some sort of note that I don't know if we want to have like a template holder, like if we're issuing an order of conditions, if there's mitigation plans, then we have to fill out the template and then read that condition. That might be complicated to remember every single time, but that would at least give us a placeholder in the order of conditions template for mitigation work specifically. And then the commission calls the shots with the parameters. But then maybe this stays for just restoration and replication work.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree. I think
okay.
that's the way to go.
Yeah.
Okay, so I will add a,
What do you think, Sanjay? Does that
I
sound
agree.
good?
I think that'd be perfect. Yeah, because replication restoration, I think, has a much higher bar. In my mind, I don't know what I'm really talking about, but if you are restoring a full wetland, I think we'd want that kind of oversight and ensure it gets back to where it should have been.
okay. So based on the discussions tonight, I don't think we're ready to vote tonight. And I don't know if we want to keep moving this along, but I'll just, do you want me to
No,
go?
keep moving, Charlotte. I think we're going to run into a number of issues
Okay.
as we go through it. And
Okay.
I didn't think that we were really prepared to vote. But
Okay.
I think we should say to ourselves or to each other that, yeah, this is the second to last meeting about this. And that next time,
Yeah.
next time we are going to vote on whatever the results of this and any subsequent edits are.
Mhm.
We do have to move it down the road, but this is really the first time we've actually, as a group, had a
Right.
chance to have an open conversation about each of these things,
Mhm.
and so it might be unrealistic to think that we're going to read
Yeah.
through these and approve them. We're going to find out where the sticking points are tonight, and
Okay.
hopefully resolve those, and we'll have another one, which I would hope would be very brief.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah.
Can-
So this
before-
one,
So
yeah.
commissioners, you're all going to get your chance to read all of this. And the next time around, we're not going to have a long discussion about it. We're going to
That's fine.
say, have you, you've had a chance to read it. We're going to have a vote on it.
Hey guys,
So-
this is Valerio. Can I just say one quick thing? I won't belabor it. I know I got on this topic late.
No, don't
You know,
worry.
I feel like that there was one gentleman who came before us who for years had been cutting Phragmites with a scythe in front of his house.
Yeah.
And I was really sympathetic to that and wish we had some way to sort of easily, approve and vet those kinds of things versus like a big new development that had to which would take a lot more scrutiny. And I don't know if that's something that's exactly related to what you've been talking about, but it sounds like maybe it is. And so I don't know if there's a way to figure that out as part of this. And with that, I'll let you guys.
That's a great comment, Valerio, because I think hopefully if we can get to this discussion tonight, I do have on our agenda, we're going to talk about some of our parameters on landscaping and maintenance activities and types of vegetation removal, and then it kind of ties into herbicides. So I'd definitely love to try and get the commission's thoughts on a lot of that, because I think that's going to reflect how we revise our regulations, and also in the even future, how we're going to update this template again once we revise the regulations. So I think a lot of that will definitely come into play once we start updating our 20-year-old regulations and how we want to manage that type of work. And then the conditions, I think, will follow suit. But for now, we're just updating our conditions on the current regulations and guidelines that we have. And then I assume this will be updated again, maybe in another year or less. So, but yeah. Keep moving?
Charlotte,
No.
before you move ahead, I'm going to just bring us back to the idea of who has the most conservative
Okay.
kind of representation for restoration, replication, and mitigation. We're very quick to accept these mitigation plans or replication plans from the wetland scientists who come in, but we don't really have a good kind of guide to tell us that they're
Mhm.
actually meeting it, you know?
Okay.
And so I'm just wondering if in this somehow
Hmm.
we could suggest that, you know, I mean, because again, it's like, you know, what really constitutes mitigation versus restoration, et cetera, and how do we actually determine whether or not it's good enough?
Hmm.
So,
Okay.
Can
Yeah.
we, can we bill them and have them pay for a peer review? When appropriate?
yes.
Well, we were
That might
talking
help
about, before you joined, Valerio, we were talking about when these boilerplate documents are completed and we voted on them, that the final step is to send them, or maybe the last step before we vote is to send them out to town council to make sure that our boilerplate is consistent with our bylaws and regulations.
Sure.
So we don't overstep our bounds on this.
Okay, yeah, so I guess at the end of this, let's come up with like a rough date of when we want to look at this a final time, and then I'll obviously send it to council beforehand. So I can quickly move on to try and get to the other items on the list, but this one
Yeah,
was
please.
copied directly from the Wetlands Protection Act. So, and since we're going to start seeing a lot of these previously disturbed riverfront area projects, I figured this should definitely be a condition, and it shall survive the issuance of a COC. This language was pretty much copy pasted from the Wetlands Protection Act, reading the redevelopment standards. So I don't know if anyone has anything else to add here, but I'll just note that that's where I got it.
Why do they specify riverfront area as opposed to other buffers?
Good
Riverfront's not
question.
a buffer.
Yeah, the riverfront area is an entire resource area, so they have really, really strict standards for protecting the riverfront area, especially when it comes to new development or redevelopment. So yeah, no further alteration is allowed within restoration or mitigation areas except as required to maintain them. So like, for example, if somebody builds something in previously disturbed riverfront area and there's mitigation plantings and stuff that are established maybe in the inner riparian zone, they're not allowed to build in there in the future, and that condition shall survive the issuance of a COC. So that's kind of like, you know, if it's like a very strict standard under the act to make the riverfront better, because all riverfront area for the most part is pretty much disturbed in one way, shape, or form. So that's why they put a lot of emphasis on trying to enhance it and protect it for future, you know.
So Charlotte, the riverfront, like the 100 feet is
200 feet, sorry.
all 200 feet is the actual resource. It's not a
Yes.
buffer.
Yes, it's not a buffer, and it doesn't
Okay.
have a buffer. So
Got
even
it.
though it has the largest area, it doesn't have a buffer zone after that. So it's just the 200 feet from annual mean high water.
Conceptually, though, you might think of the outer zone as something of a buffer. It is the resource, but the standards are looser in the outer zone. Is that correct, Charlotte?
At least for new development, you're usually not allowed to go in the inner riparian zone. Actually, no, I'm sorry, redevelopment, and also it's in our regulations that we don't allow disturbance in the inner riparian zone. I have to double check it if it's redevelopment and new development or just new development, but usually the inner riparian zone is more strictly protected.
Right. And but there are still restrictions
Yes,
in the outer, and
yes.
so we as commissioners all need to be aware of what those differences are. And you know, I know that I don't know, it appears as if historically Cohasset really has not paid much attention to these riparian zones. And it's only recently that our applicants, contractors have been showing these on their plans. I think when I first started, I never saw any of these. And probably in the last year, since we've brought it up more and more, they are anticipating this, which is good. And we are seeing those boundaries being drawn on their plans these days.
I think a common issue with conservation commissions is everyone thinks it's a buffer zone. And it's not just us, like it's literally everybody. It's one of the main trainings MACC offers to educate people about the importance of the riverfront area and why it has such a large and complicated set of protections, you know? But yeah, I mean, it's not just us. Everyone's made that mistake. I made it when I first started. I thought it was a buffer zone too. So more you know. But yeah, so
I know this is an aside. When you measure,
mhm.
is it in plan that you measure 200 feet?
In the plan, like in the document, like the site plan?
Now, do you do it in 2 dimensions or 3? In other words, if there's a slope,
Mm,
is it if you lay down a tape, of course, on a slope and you go out 200 feet, you're going to be short
yeah,
200.
I thought
feet
it was a
of plane.
lateral plane.
Lateral fence. We should just confirm that if you would.
Okay. Yeah, it's definitely from annual mean high water. I just don't remember if it's,
I
I'm
don't
pretty
think
sure
there'd be
it's
any-
lateral.
How could you there'd be no way to show that scale on a plan if you measured in 3D, right?
Oh, no, sure, of course you can. Yeah. You can do that. A surveyor can do that. You can do it on paper. Yeah, not a problem. But a
I think we want it in.
a homeowner's not going to be able to take a tape and measure 200 feet out and know where that riparian zone is.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
It would
We prefer
require-
it in plan because it's further anyway, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. You got a triangle in cross section. You got a triangle, right? And the hypotenuse is going to be different than the one of the legs of the triangle.
So this one was already existing. And then this is our pool BMP, so I'm not going to touch that because I'm not touching that. This was one of the edits from town council. I'll just quickly mention it. So we had any conditions from NHESP or Division of Marine Fisheries shall be strictly followed. Town council said that that can be potentially problematic because DMF is not an enforcing regulatory agency. They really can only provide recommendations, and obviously a lot of commissions choose to implement those recommendations, but they're not requirements, whereas NHESP is an enforcing regulatory agency like DEP. So that's why it said, unless otherwise specified, any recommendations from DMF should be followed and incorporated. So like kind of protecting ourselves just a little bit. And we very commonly look at DMF's regulations and recommendations for dock projects. So I think we're covered. It's just we had to take out the shall for DMF. That was town council's edit. And then kind of going on into floats here. This is straight out of our regulations. They have to be stored in a suitable upland location from all protected resource areas. And I don't know if we want to add language, but obviously be a connection with a COC, you know, for a dock project. I don't know if it's good to add that language.
Well, one of the things that I'm glad you brought this up. One of the things that we should have in is that the dock shall not be dragged across the marsh to that upland site.
Mhm.
And of course we've seen a bit of that. So that's granted, that is definitely inconvenient for everybody that has a dock, that they have to float it down the Gulf River and take it to the boat ramp, or I don't know what they do in Little Harbor or Straits Pond.
Mhm.
But you know, we've seen the trails that exist from people dragging their floats up across the marsh.
Yeah, and it probably goes without saying, but I know it doesn't. The docks can't be stored in the marsh either.
Mhm.
Yeah, pretty much gets it.
And then this is another condition that we almost always emphasize for variance requests. So I figured let's put it in the order conditions template. So we wrote no mechanized equipment, vehicles, trailers, etc. are allowed within the 50-foot buffer unless specifically approved. And so that language would cover us through a variance request. So if we were to grant a variance, we could say, you know, under certain cases, we could say, okay, we'll allow this, but not allow that. So at least this condition covers us unless we specify otherwise. So there's that. I think we're pretty much all in agreement on this one, right? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
And then this one, I don't know, I'll be honest, this one would probably be a little bit hard to implement, but as we've seen with a lot of projects with final site investigations, trees are damaged, uprooted, and they die from the heavy construction. So, you know, I do think some sort of tree protection detail should be added to the site plans. I'm just wondering if we should add this more in our regulations, and then it's required for them to submit it before we even approve an order of conditions. But I know that would take longer to do. So I don't know if we want to put this as a kind of a placeholder for now, for them to provide this documentation to me to kind of just, you know, I can inspect this during a pre-construction site visit. I can inspect the tree protections, the erosion controls, et cetera. So this could be a document or even just a workflow or a construction methodology or something for them to provide to me. So I'm trying to keep it general to make it easy to comply with. Because I'm worried if we have like a professionally produced tree protection plan, it's like the same thing. If it could be costly, people may not do it. It could, you know, issues with compliance is more my concern rather than cost. But what do you guys think about this type of condition orders in general?
You know, Charlotte, a tree protection plan is no more difficult than the silt sock location.
Yeah.
It's really a line on the ground where
Mhm.
where they need to be putting up something that keeps
Yeah.
vehicles from moving through there, and
Mhm.
I'm all for it.
Okay.
I thought it was, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Will.
I thought it was, you know, where you build the specific protection against the tree, where you cover the tree in some sort of
Mhm.
wood so that if something runs into it, as opposed,
Mhm.
I think both are good, but
Mhm.
in some cases, like the swing arm of a excavator could reach 15 feet and hit a
Yeah,
tree.
it protects not just the trunk, but a radius around the tree to protect
Yeah.
the roots and the branches as well.
Yeah, I
And
think,
then
yeah.
my second comment was just that I think there's a distinction between those trees that are in the 50-foot buffer and 100-foot buffer, right? We're not gonna have a tree protection plan for everything.
Yeah, we would
guess.
really
Yeah.
only be, it would be within our jurisdiction, so within riverfront, buffer zones, et cetera. But outside of that, we don't have jurisdiction, unfortunately. But at least inside the buffer zones, we call the shots. So yeah, if you guys want to keep this, I'm all for it. It's just, for me, it's mostly just, I think it'll just be a painful growing lesson for contractors, which I'm happy to go through with them, so. But I've seen enough. I mean, I don't know if you guys have seen my pictures. You've seen the site photos of like, well, I'll be looking at stuff and then you see these trees like scarred and damaged and you know what comes next. It may not happen in a year. It may happen in like 10 years where, you know,
Yep. I
things
agree.
infiltrate the tree and they all die. And then they're coming to us years later, submitting an RDA to take out the trees. So, we do what we can, you know? Okay, so that's that one. And then this is, I know this one's complicated, but I'm happy to do this as a cover sheet and not as a condition, but I really want to start implementing hard stops in the project where I go out and inspect, because oftentimes the only times I'm called are obviously pre-construction. Everyone's really good with that. Most contractors know to call me. And then I don't usually get a call sometimes until the end of the project. Some contractors are good and they let me know when they're putting in the infiltration, so then I can go down with the engineer. Some people, if they have to do test pits, will obviously call me and I'll go down with the engineer. But for the most part, sometimes I don't hear from these people until project completion, and there's too many projects for me to obviously actively stay on top of. It's the applicant's job to comply with the order. So I would love to install mid-project inspections, and I tried to do, so pre-construction is obvious, pre and post installation of stormwater management. So when they're digging the hole and when they're burying it. And then this one I think is critical, pre-landscaping. Like, I don't know what to call it. I just called it that. I know that's probably worded a little weirdly, but really need to meet the landscaping designer and their contractor to go over the second part of the project, which is obviously the hardscaping and landscaping. And obviously for replication mitigation stuff. So obviously before they're about to start the work, that's pretty standard. And then obviously as applicable, you know, obviously I do status checks. I just don't have the capacity to do it for every project. So yeah, I mean, this is totally up to you guys of how you want to implement this, because I'm all for it. But I'm just saying that, as you know, as you've seen with COCs, most of the deviations are from landscaping, hardscaping, and then if anyone takes out trees. And then, yeah, so whatever you guys think are some good time stops for me to do inspections. I can put it just as a cover sheet when I issue the order of conditions. It could be the affidavit that they have to sign. So we could just do that and maybe just have a general condition on acknowledging all, required inspections. So it's up to you guys, because this is a very long, it was 6 pages, now it's 9 pages. So I'll do whatever you guys think is easier.
One of my
You
concerns
touched
is
on it.
when we see a designed infiltration chamber, they put in 1, sometimes 2 or even 3 test pits. But still, that's still relatively sparse sampling. And so when they actually excavate it, that's your only chance to look at it and make some adjustments to the design. And in fact, if they, for example, I'm not sure that they would come back to us if they did some contractors, I don't think would come back to us if they did an excavation and then it started to fill up full of water, which would mean that they've penetrated the seasonal high water stand of the water table. So there's no way that hole then could comply with the 2-foot separation. So I think that maybe not when they start filling it with gravel is the important time. It's when they've actually just finished the excavation or within a couple of days of that, and see what kind of seepage into that excavation takes place.
Okay, so
I-
you
I
care
just
more
get-
about the pre-installation.
Yeah, I'm just suspicious about a lot of the systems I see go in. And I know from just digging in my own backyard how easy it is to find bedrock here, and you think you've got a couple of feet, and you find out that, well, you do have a couple of feet, but if you move over a couple of feet, you don't have any more than 6 inches. So I think that's the most important moment in the installation of a infiltration system, is when they've actually got the hole excavated and you get a chance to see what's going to happen.
So maybe I could do a condition of like a follow-up with like site photos or something for, after they've already put the system in, I guess. I mean,
Well, that
they're
doesn't tell you.
typically supposed to send that to me, but nobody ever
That
does.
doesn't tell you anything. Once they got the hole in the ground and they pour the gravel in and they set those chambers in there, yeah, okay, they're not going to cheat. If they say they're putting in 10 chambers, they're going to put in 10 chambers.
Oh, yeah, they're paying for it.
But on the other hand, if they say they're 2 feet, the bottom of the infiltration chamber is 2 feet above the high stand of the water table, that's another matter altogether. Once you get that excavation, you've got more than just a test pit. You've got the actual site that's going to go in, and you would be able to see modeling or even even seepage before they start pouring that gravel in there. And I think that is the time to look at each one of these. And the rest of it, they're not going to screw up the rest of it.
Okay, so maybe just a pre-installation inspection to look at the hole with the engineer, and then post installation, they just need
Or
to
they
take a
put
bunch of
anything
photos.
back in the hole. Once they've excavated the site for that chamber, that's when you should look at it, Charlotte.
Okay,
And if it looks like, yeah, they're still above the water table, you're not going to know whether they're 2 feet above it or not necessarily, but at least if they have penetrated deeply enough and the water table is high enough, you're going to know. You're going to see seepage.
yeah,
and that's the time to make them reevaluate it.
okay. All right, so maybe just a pre-installation inspection of the hole and then follow up with photos once that inspection's done or something, so.
Yeah,
okay.
sure. And like I say, I seriously doubt that they would tell us they're going to put in 10 chambers and only put in 5.
No, yeah, absolutely not. Usually they're upgrading sometimes, like sometimes I'll get to the site and they'll say, oh, by the way, we ordered larger size chambers versus the standard.
Mhm.
And usually that's never a problem. It's when they go smaller where it's an issue and I need to talk to the engineer, but sometimes people just upgrade because the owner wants to. They're like, yeah, if I'm spending the money, I want the higher capacity system. And so that is kind of like okay.
That's fine. That's
yeah,
great.
There you go. spend more money, that's good for me. Yeah, same number of chambers, that's all I care about, or if you increase it, that's even better, so.
Yeah, right.
Okay, but would you guys want this as a condition, or should I just put it in like an affidavit cover sheet? The benefit to being in the order is obviously it's in the legal
Well,
document they record.
I just think that you were talking about having temporary stops in the construction process, and I would think
Yeah.
that would be a really important one, right?
Yeah.
there. Is, hey, give me a ring when you got the whole thing excavated. I'll be out tomorrow
Okay,
to look at
Okay.
it. And
So
that'll
put
give
it in the
at
order.
least- At
Yes.
least overnight, and you should be able to tell.
Yeah.
To some extent, and I mean, you know what modeled soil looks like, so.
I do, yep.
You know, I'd rely upon your judgment to say, and if you have any questions about whether they are or not, then you can stop them and get a soil evaluator in there to assess the whole pit that they've excavated instead of just
Mhm.
their test pit.
Yeah,
That
no,
person
luckily,
is- If that person's willing to sign off, great, okay?
yeah, no, I would definitely want the engineer and or soil evaluator obviously out there. A good thing is, you know, some of the
They don't
engineers that
need
we
to
work
be
with.
out there for every time. I mean, you should be able to, within
Yeah,
5
but
minutes
the
of getting out
engineer is the
there,
one,
you should have some notion of whether or not
yeah,
they have penetrated the water table. It'll be obvious.
no, you're right. I'm just saying in terms of liability, the engineer is the one who has to put their as-built stamp on
Yeah,
it. So they're
yeah.
the ones that have to be legally inspecting it, but I definitely need to be like there. So I've definitely gone out with like Merrill, Morse, even Grady to look at test pits. So I've definitely seen enough of them where I can see when something's concerning, but I shouldn't be the only one because obviously I'm
No,
not the one who's gonna
no,
do
that's
their
not
as-built.
That's not what I'm suggesting. I'm just saying that you are going to be the first one to look at it, and
Yeah.
you can use your judgment to say, hey, I think we need to have this looked at by a professional.
Yeah.
Or
Okay.
looks good to me.
Mhm. Okay,
So maybe,
Throw the gravel in the
maybe
pit, put the chambers in, it's good to go.
as far as the order though, maybe Charlotte, so you could give yourself some wiggle room, maybe you just have the order say comply with all inspections as required by the conservation agent. And then put the rest in the cover sheet. And that would allow you to
idea.
amend it as you go forward, you could always tinker with the attachment as months and years progress, but they would still be
Yeah.
obligated per the order. I think you suggested that earlier, something along those lines.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea too. I can definitely just take all this language and put it in a cover sheet, but then just have a condition.
To comply with all inspections. And that way we don't
Yeah.
have to increase the order like by another 2 pages or whatever.
Okay,
But we can just give you the authority and they still have to comply with it.
yeah, that's actually a great idea because then I can add as many inspections as I want.
Well, you don't want to you don't have too many in there.
No, I don't. I definitely don't want a million of them, but I think for these critical time points, I know this will quadruple my work, but I really think it's important because then by the time I get to a COC, hopefully by then you guys are not seeing surprises. There's always going to be those people who do it, but I think by maybe putting in a little bit more babysitting, hopefully I can try to mitigate some of those deviations. But I only can do so much. Sometimes they already make the changes by the time I get out there. So, but we'll see. I think this will be an improvement though, to try and reduce landscaping deviations. I think that will be really helpful.
Unlike landscaping, when you're putting in a stormwater system, you are you're doing your neighbors a favor. And if you don't do it right, and you start causing flooding in your neighbors, that's not a good thing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is looking out not just for the applicant himself, but all their downhill neighbors.
Yeah.
Who very well might come back to us and say, why did you ever let them do this? Now I've got water in my backyard that I never had before. We hear that from time to time. So we really should be thinking about it as more of a community service rather than penalizing the applicants.
Yeah.
We're requiring you to be a good neighbor.
Okay. Well, that's it for the special conditions. Just a note that I will be adding this to all of our permits. This is, I will show, that's in the reference folder in OneDrive if you guys want to look at it, but this is actually to be in compliance with our MS4 standards. So I'm kind of being prompted to do this with issuing permits. And then given the issues with pools, I will be providing our pool BMP letter. Even though it's in the order of conditions, I'm still going to send the letter. So they're going to get a nice little packet. Yeah, so this was to be in compliance with MS4 as part of the town overall, and then this is just for pools. So that's I just added that note. This will not be in the actual document. It's just a placeholder for me when I'm issuing the permit to say, oh, I need that. And then I'll do the cover sheet, the order, the stormwater permit if there is one, and then these additional supplementary documents. So the applicant, again, gets a nice little packet.
Okay, so tell us what MS4 means.
Oh man, that's NIPD's. That's the EPA, non-pollution, what is it? Non-points, yeah.
Source pollution.
Yeah, so when you have, the towns all have to, pretty much be in compliance, especially with town projects. And so a lot of towns work with agencies like North and South Rivers Watershed Association to assist towns with making sure that they're in compliance with the federal and state guidelines and standards. So one of those standards is public outreach and education. And so per previous discussions with, Lori Wolf from NSWRA, she said we can issue it with any and all permits that are applicable. So the most applicable permits are obviously wetland permits and stormwater permits. I'll be honest, it's a stretch for me to try and tell building staff to issue these pamphlets every single time with a building permit because there's so many building permits that are issued. But I think this is a great start with just improving our compliance overall with the, MS4 standards. So
is this related to our town-wide
yes,
general NIPD's
yes,
permit from
Yep.
EPA, right?
correct.
So as I understand it, every municipality has,
Yes,
it does get a NIPD's permit.
Yep.
And it covers things like runoff from roadways
yes,
and public land and things like that, but
Yep.
also homeowners as well are covered
Yes.
under that same standard. So
they also have to provide reports every single year. And my data, actually particularly our local stormwater permit data, is used every single year in terms of enforcement, how many enforcement issues, stop work orders, catch basins are cleaned as part of enforcement procedures, how many local stormwater permits are issued. So a lot of our data is evaluated as part of this compliance, but as the town's overall compliance. So that's why I'm kind of a small piece of the puzzle, but a piece of the puzzle nonetheless. So this was an agreement to kind of just pass out those pamphlets that you guys will see in OneDrive. And again, they may not apply to every project, but at least you're getting the word out. The more people are made aware, especially with low impact development. I think that's something we can talk about another time, maybe for stormwater regs, but I think low impact development is definitely something that a lot of towns and local bylaws and regulations are starting to focus on to try and improve water quality specifically. But with that, I know it's 8:12. I guess for now.
Sorry. Hey,
Oh, sorry.
yeah, I'm sorry. I hate to drag it out, but I have a NIPD's question. Are you saying that
Sure.
every project in the town, residential and commercial, is covered under some town-wide NIPD's permit?
I don't know about residential, but I know the town, for the most part, is covered under their permit when they do like road work, utility repairs, catch basin stuff, road improvement, maintenance.
If it's covered,
I think
if it's not in the
there's a
permit, then
threshold.
they need a separate one. If they didn't like keep it, if it's not in the pre-approved permit, then they would need to get a separate one, wouldn't they?
Yeah, like for example, some projects that alter over an acre of land need a NIPD's general construction permit with a stormwater prevention pollution plan. So like work like that.
But so
I
what,
assume it's not
the reason I'm asking is because if you were, say, to dewater something.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you need your own NIPD's permit for your
Correct.
project? Yeah, okay,
Yes.
got it. Thank you.
In a lot of cases, I believe you would to dewater, especially into like, for example, some projects on Elm Street needed They needed to get a NIPD's permit with a stormwater prevention pollution plan to dewater.
The annual ones are basically capture all the anticipated maintenance work and that sort of thing, that would impact, like. I was just looking through those actually for the town.
So sorry, Chris, does that cover general maintenance for residential, or is it just under the local?
I didn't see,
municipal
no,
authority?
well, at least the ones I was looking at, it was all municipal level.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
There's some public involvement related ones, but not for private residents.
Mhm.
It's all public. I have it right here, but
Okay. Yeah, and
not to go on a tangent, but
Mhm.
did you know that the Conservation Commission is responsible for the maintenance of the rain gardens around James Brook?
I did not.
Really?
I'm not surprised though.
We adopted that in 2015 or something like that.
Interesting.
So we're
Maybe I
not, so we're not generally responsible for all rain gardens, but that specific one we
Yeah, the
are.
water department's supposed to maintain the majority of them around the Peppermint Brook, but James Brook, I guess we adopted, there's 5 of them.
So what,
Okay.
so what do we have to, what's our responsibility there, Chris, you know?
I think it's an annual, it depends on a landscaping plan, but it's usually replacement of whatever, removal of like sediment if it's become impermeable, and cleaning out organic matter, and replacement of plants. You'd have to look at like the individual rain gardens to see how they're designed, but
Does the carbon source have to be replenished
they have-
periodically?
usually they're designed with cleanouts. I'm not really 100% on the design of each one, but they not typically. I don't think you'd have to dig it all up, but if they haven't been maintained for 20 years, I don't know.
I noticed there's one in Hull, right off Richards Road that it's quite a large structure. There's a huge infiltration chamber on the hillside there. And just for orientation, that is at the west end of Straits Pond on the Hull side. It's near, it's on the hill that their town hall is on, and it faces east. It's a large infiltration chamber that's been excavated in the side of the hill, and then a rain garden just before that discharge reaches Straits Pond. And it's been totally neglected, and it's just all invasive species now. And town of Hull has done nothing to maintain it, or after spending a lot of money.
That's the same thing that Cohasset did. They got big grants back in like 2007, 2009 to install all these, and basically we're supposed to maintain them. I was looking through some water commission minutes, and there was like a question. The Avalon apparently donated $70,000 for rain garden maintenance, and the minutes were, whatever happened to that? And the question, and it was like, oh yeah, we'll look into that. And then no mention of it ever again in the minutes. And then a couple years later, the question was like, are we still having kids from the high school maintain the rain gardens? And then that's the last it was ever mentioned, 2017.
Fun. So I guess for the order of conditions, obviously, I think we want to look over it, and you guys so do we want to have like a rough, like put it on an agenda in late January, February, March? Like, what do you guys think? Because I can definitely get town council to look at it quickly if I wanted to. I can just call them and say, hey, I need this. But for you guys, like, how much time do you guys think you need to kind of look through some of that stuff? And then I'll probably need a little bit to, go through your questions and comments. And I'll provide maybe an updated version, maybe early next week. Do you guys want to kind of just put it out for?
We're coming up for the holidays, of course, and
Yeah.
So in some cases that might make for more free time for us to read these, and then maybe not. And we do have a full schedule for, is it January 4th? It's our.
Oh yeah, definitely don't put it on January 4th.
Right.
No.
So So I would suggest that we leave sufficient time for everybody to do the homework here. And I would expect a very brief discussion about this. And particularly after, and before we vote on it, I think town council should look at it before
Yeah.
we vote on it.
Yeah.
And then you can present it to us as, this has been approved by town council. You've all had a chance to read it. Let's vote.
Okay.
And this should be like a 10-minute thing.
Okay, how about like early March? The first or second meeting in March.
Yeah, okay.
Chris, you are gonna be there. Chris McFarland, you are gonna be there or not gonna be there? I can't remember which months you said you weren't available. Was that March?
No, March, I'm good.
Oh, okay,
I'm
Okay.
gonna, I'm only, it's just when school has break, I'm not gonna be here.
okay. Okay, so maybe either meeting in March. I can tentatively put it on the first meeting, and then obviously if people need more time or if council hasn't looked at it by then, I can put it on the second meeting in March.
I would say that gives all of us plenty of time, so
Okay.
no excuses that you didn't read it. That's a good long time.
Okay,
So, yeah, I don't want to see this can get kicked down the road. Now, if council doesn't have time, that of course we're gonna have to
Yeah.
abide by that, but
okay. So for you guys, I know sometimes OneDrive, I don't know if I make it more confusing than less confusing, but this is our shared conservation files folder. So where would you guys like me to put all the documents that you guys would like to review? Maybe let's just say for March, like should I make this is a meeting folder, and then I just made a 2024 folder for all the meetings moving forward. So would you guys like it to have its own folder? And maybe just make one here and then just put everything in there, and then you guys can all centrally locate it so that it's not.
Yes.
I would say you can put it wherever you want, but wherever you
Okay.
put it, send everybody a dedicated link to it. in an
Okay.
email. That way we don't have to hunt around. All you have to do is click the link in the email and it'll take us right to where we want to go.
Okay, cool. It's
I
got
think
its
that's
own
easier
folder
for
now.
you too, right?
Yes. No, it's easier for me. I just need to know, like, where do you guys want to put this?
And like
So-
I say, I don't think it matters, but I think the easiest way is to create a shortcut, send everybody an email with that shortcut, and then nobody has to hunt around.
Okay, great. I will send this out to you guys so that everyone just has it, can save the email, or if you just go to the shared conservation files, it's right here. Also, I can make folders different colors now, so that's fun. I don't know if different colors easier. But okay, great.
Thank
All
you.
right, moving along. Tom, just looking at the agenda briefly, since it's almost, well, I don't know if we wanted to keep it to 2 hours or if we want to just keep going, but the stormwater permit template and the COC template are extremely short. So do you
Yeah.
want to look through those real quick?
Yeah, let's
Okay.
hold it to our stated 2 hours, and let's just get as much of these
Okay,
done as we
so
can.
this one, I'll start with the COC. This is really easy. This template, to my knowledge, has never been changed. So there's really only two conditions, really just saying that the plans were approved, but, and, you know, basically they determined it's compliant. And that this is the long-term O&M plan. That's the document that has to be recorded. That has to be perpetually maintained. So it's just requiring owners moving forward when the permit is closed to maintain the systems perpetually. And then I just added this. So just for pool projects, and then I will issue the pool BMP letter with the COC. So does that kind of look good to you guys? Is there any other condition when a stormwater project is closed that you guys might want to see, or? This we can't, I'll have a placeholder. There's always been a placeholder for it, so that's definitely up to us, but we don't typically add conditions for an order, but under a local stormwater COC, I don't know if we
Yeah,
want to
just
leave that
wondering-
open.
I'm just wondering what recourse we have if remember, we're basing our stormwater permits based on a computer model.
Yeah.
It was written in 1980,
Mhm.
and it's been so drastically been superseded in subsequent decades that it's really a pretty worthless model that we're looking at, and
Mhm.
and we're kind of stuck with that. So I don't know what to do when we have when we have one of these things that's been designed and we've approved it because it meets, the standard. And then at some point later, I mean, we've seen indications of this, that these things that their models don't always work the way they say they're going to. And I just don't know what recourse we have to bring somebody back.
The only, I think for
They
now,
complied with the state standards and,
yeah,
so in the end, I mean, I keep saying that our bylaws say that we're regulating to performance, but nevertheless, we approve or disapprove these based on design.
mhm,
And there's a real big difference between a model and reality.
mhm. Yeah,
I've thought about it a bit and I just don't see a remedy for this, so I guess I'm just blowing.
I think something that'll help in the future, and I can't say when, is when the state updates their stuff, which who knows when that's gonna happen. I was hearing,
A 40-year-old model to a 20-year-old model.
yeah, I mean, slightly better than nothing, but.
Yeah.
Okay, but do you guys like this? Do you
Yeah.
want to vote on it? Do you want to just? Anyone want to think it over for March?
No, let's,
Well, wait,
yeah.
just quickly, Tom, your point about performance, can we not edit item number 1 to require the performance somehow?
Well, our regulations or our bylaw, I think, states that these are performance standards that we're approving or modifying stormwater permits for, but you don't really know how it's going to perform until you have, first of all, a storm that just might sweep through, and Charlotte's running around like crazy trying to look at what's happening in every street in Cohasset to see where some of these are failing. It just doesn't. It's one of those great ideas that can't really be enforced, I don't think. I mean, even if we had rules about it, how would we ever check on every one of these? Charlotte could get a call at 3 a.m. in the morning when the conditions are bad and say, hey, Charlotte, go out and check out such and such an address and see if their stormwater system is working. And
Yeah,
so
we do.
it's just it's not realistic.
We do have after the fact regulations. I don't, section 13 or the subsequent section talks about the required maintenance logs that are required to be submitted for the next couple of years to the Conservation Commission. I'm just going to say that has never been enforced, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I could definitely start doing it now. It's just that would triple my work because, usually when we close a permit, it's like, we're done. But technically our regulations do stand clear that they have to maintain it. They have to provide the maintenance logs. They have to keep a record. So if there's ever an issue, where neighbors are complaining and we're called in for a show cause hearing, and we're like, okay, where are your maintenance logs? And they don't have them, then they can be found, liable, under the stormwater regulations that we have. So
maybe that's good enough. I mean, so the neighbors are probably going to be the first ones to detect a change in runoff in their yards, so maybe if we do have enforcement that's available to us in that sense, somebody comes to us and says, this has never happened before, and they built a new house uphill from me, and now my yard's flooding or my basement's flooding or gravel is getting washed across my yard or whatever. I mean, we do have that enforcement, so maybe that's as good as we could ever expect.
I think this will also get better over time because the stormwater bylaw has only really been around for the last 15 plus years in terms of enforcement.
Yeah.
So more and more homes are starting to be constructed under administrative or full stormwater projects. And I think over the next 10 plus years, there's so many housing sales, there's so many people adding additions, garages, pools. More and more people are going to start to have stormwater long-term O&M plans. So if there were ever any issues, I'm sure I'm going to be getting a lot more calls, and I can pull up and say, you had a 2020 permit, you're supposed to maintain this, and there's clear indication of failure. we can bring them in for show causes. So I think the groundwork has definitely been laid under the bylaw to really make sure that this is done. It's just right now, I don't have the physical capacity to chase every single person for their maintenance logs. But technically, yeah, if there's ever any issues, I'm sure the abutters are gonna be the first ones to let us know. I've actually already been called to sites where there are issues, but unfortunately, there's no stormwater permit on file, so I can't really do much about it now. But yeah, I have definitely gotten at least 3 or 4 calls within the last 6 months because of all the rain we've gotten. I've had neighbors reporting this has never been done before. They did something to their driveway, they did XYZ, but they didn't need a stormwater permit. So then, you know, I encourage people to call consultants, but if there was a COC that was issued, I can say they are required to maintain it. So if there's evidence of failure, I can enforce it after the fact. So,
Yeah, that's probably as good as we can expect.
yeah. But yeah. Did you guys want to vote on this one?
Shall we? Anybody object to voting on this? Okay, so I move that we accept the new version of the, what's it called here, Charlotte?
Certificate of completion, stormwater permit template.
So I move that we accept the revised stormwater conditions of compliance. Did I get that right? Probably not.
Yep.
Second.
So do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
We're gonna have a roll call vote. Will Ashton,
Will Ashton, I.
Kathy Berrigan,
Kathy Berrigan, aye.
Chris McIntyre,
Chris McIntyre, aye.
Chris McFarland,
Chris McFarland, aye.
Tom Bell, aye. This vote passes 5-0.
Awesome.
Good. Okay, one down.
All right, one down. All right, stormwater permit template. This one's a tad longer, but definitely still only 2 pages versus 9. So these are the existing conditions in black. I added similar changes to the order, put them on the stormwater permit template in red. And so that has never been in the permit template is I want a I would like a pre-construction visit, especially for stormwater projects, because I'm never made aware when stormwater permit projects are starting unless there's an order of conditions. So the only reason why is people know to call me for orders. So I think we should set that same standard for stormwater projects. And then does everyone agree with that, or do you guys have any
I
other?
agree.
Okay. And then good news, our recent edits on the stormwater bylaw were recently approved by the Attorney General. They haven't been fully implemented to E-code yet, but they have been approved. So Alex said, town council said when they've been approved by Attorney General, we're pretty much good to go. So I revised the template to say the permit is valid for 3 years upon the date from the date of issuance, instead of just saying it remains open until a COC is issued. So our regulations will have to be updated, but the good news is the bylaw is, you know, above that. So the bylaw now says stormwater permits moving forward, not retrospectively, unfortunately, but moving forward, all stormwater permits are 3 years old.
Mhm.
Great.
So I added that. And then, yeah, I did not, I took that language out because I didn't think that language sounded right. We shall have the right to enter the site. I took this language out just because I technically have the right to enter the site under local and state regulations, but it doesn't supersede the Fourth Amendment. So agents always have to be careful with entering sites without verbal or written permission. But just so you guys know, I now have people sign a permission to access site form for every application. Haven't done it as much for RDAs, but I have been doing it for RDAs more consistently. So that's why I kind of said without prior notice, just to kind of ease up on that language. But they are now signing written permission access forms. So it gives me written permission to enter the site. And this is all the same. I just did require, that was just a language change. This is another language change. Added the pool thing. And then I'm going to issue the pool BMP letter and the same MS4 documents. I put a special section for special conditions. We often don't do special conditions for stormwater projects. We're very good with orders, but sometimes with stormwater projects, we don't feel the need to do special conditions, but I just added it to the template nonetheless. And then this is a big issue with stormwater projects, permanent vegetative cover. people will call me for a final inspection when they haven't even put down the grass seed. So it's like, I'm not even entertaining a COC request unless I see permanent site stabilization. And then I added the same language that I added to the order of conditions, that removal or failure to maintain barriers may result in enforcement actions until all barriers are restored. Additional mitigation measures for any erosion and sedimentation leaving the site may be enforced. And that's obviously, as you guys have seen with the last show cause hearings, of people removing barriers, running over barriers, dumping dirt down catch basins, all that good stuff. So that's the language I added. I don't know if anybody has anything else to add of what you guys would like to see. And then I was going to do the same cover letter. So I can just put this in a cover letter. And just, I covered up myself with just required inspections. And I can just say, and per the conservation agent, I guess. Or actually, I'm the stormwater agent under the stormwater bylaw, sorry. So I can just put this in a cover letter if that works for you guys. And it's the same inspections as required per an order minus mitigation plantings. I don't know if we want to add mitigation planting inspections. That's not really as pertinent for stormwater. So I did maybe I could just do, Tom, you just want pre-installation?
Yeah, and specifically, pre-installation means as soon as they're done digging and they're ready to start dumping gravel into the thing.
Okay.
That's the critical moment when you can see the exposed interior out there excavation. And
Okay.
Once you've seen that, it looks good to you. The rest of it is pretty much, I don't see any reason why you should need to go back out there.
Okay, so I'll put this,
Except, obviously to make sure all the downspouts and stuff are connected to it, all the connections exist, but in terms of when they're putting in the actual Caltech device, I don't see why you should need to be there dumping the gravel in.
okay.
You're not gonna learn anything.
Yeah.
Doing that.
Tom, your voice is a little grainy. I don't know if everyone else can hear it. It just happened recently.
More like a bad droid from Star Wars.
Yeah.
Get closer to my microphone.
No, now it's worse.
It's worse.
It's like a fuzziness. Like you broke your speaker.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe I need a new microphone.
Might be. But I guess minus the language here, which I'll take off and I'll put on the cover letter. Does anybody want more time to kind of look at this, like look at the stormwater regs and maybe think of any other conditions? Or do you guys want to vote on, are you guys satisfied with this? Or I'm just going to take this out since I'm going to put it all in a cover letter. And we wrote required inspections under the regulations and per the conservation agent. Just to kind of keep that general and then specify them in a cover letter. And then obviously 3 years expiration. I didn't put language on how they can extend it. They can Google that themselves. But yeah, did you guys want to look at this one a little bit more? Maybe look at the regs, or do you guys just want to vote on it? Or
Let me ask, is anybody not ready to vote on this?
yes, good question.
Okay, so scroll to the top so I can see the title.
Yep. It's basically the stormwater permit template. I only add the word administrative when it's an administrative permit.
So I move that we accept the revised stormwater permit and conditions. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any roll call vote? And then Will Ashton,
Will Ashton, aye.
Kathy Berrigan,
Kathy Berrigan, aye.
Chris McIntyre,
Chris McIntyre, aye.
Chris McFarland,
Chris McFarland, aye.
Tom Bell, aye. This passes 5-0-0.
Okay.
To the
Awesome.
matter. Okay, Charlotte.
Okay, so the DOA template, a couple commissioners have asked about maybe putting in some standard conditions for RDAs. Sorry, a DOA is a determination of applicability, so that's the order of conditions equivalent to an RDA. So I kind of literally just took the order of conditions template and shortened it. The only problem is I don't know how to shorten this even more because I think right now it's 15 conditions. I think that's kind of extensive for an RDA, but a lot of these are pretty common sense and they don't really require much enforcement for me. But I don't know if you guys all had time to look at this, if you think this is too much or not enough or just right. Definitely open to thoughts here. Also, if you guys see any conditions from the order of conditions template that you do want on here, I can definitely add them. Just I've narrowed it down to 14. I don't know if that's too many for an RDA.
I wouldn't think it's too many. I mean, I admit I haven't compared this to the
Okay.
NOI, so
Okay,
it might be worth us just having another look at it.
okay. So table to March.
Yes, I would like that.
Okay. Everyone agree on this one? Do you guys want more time to look at this? I would definitely look at it next to, if you have two screens, pull up and then pull up the order one
Yep.
and then just kind of compare notes. Okay. All right. So we'll table that one. All right. That got that one off the list. Okay. I think that's kind of it for templates, at least with the permits. So I'll switch gears a little bit to our enforcement stuff. So this may be the first time some of you guys are seeing this, Chris and maybe Tom. I think you guys may have seen this before. I'm sorry, I haven't updated this in a while, but we have an enforcement tracker. I will send the link. I'll make a note to send the link to you guys. It's in OneDrive. It's under the conservation agent folder. So basically what's highlighted in yellow is stuff that is either not completed or haven't followed up with in a while. And then green is completed, but I still think it should be on the list because obviously if we get repeat offenders for any of these addresses or owners, or even activities. And I did add a name, a file number, something that I might consider adding, which will take me a little while to do, contractor. So I was thinking, you know, if there's a file number or if there's no file number, the property owner, maybe the contractor. So I'm open to suggestions on how you guys want to kind of keep track of all of our violations, but I did pull up, I did come up with a little workflow where maybe we just kind of put this on our agenda quarterly or maybe a couple times a year. And if, especially maybe during, or we could just do it as needed during like an easier, lighter agenda and kind of go through some of these people. Some of them are probably going to be open for a long time, like this one, because this one, even though the fines have all been paid, the work has not been done. And I have lawyers coming to me pretty much every 3 months asking what's left to be done. So this one I'm kind of on top of, but some of these other guys, like I have no idea what happened with this one. This one was, these were before my time. All of these were before my time. So I do need to look into these a little bit more, but moving forward, these are all the ones that have happened since I've been here. And so I'm aware of each of these, and I recently reached out about this one in particular. We need to maybe catch up with this dude because he did cut down trees and we kind of never did anything about it. But then he also has another, obviously active one for stormwater. So he's on here a couple times. And then this guy, so some of these status updates, you guys will see that some of them are just waiting for permits to be closed. So I would look at this column when you guys are reviewing this tracker and kind of just see like, because sometimes the enforcement part might be closed, but the after the fact permit may not be closed. So, you know, like maybe the bulk of the enforcement stuff is done and we're just waiting for the permit to be finished. Some of these were closed with show cause hearings. Some of these, like this one, for example, this was one of the ones that I think slipped through the cracks. There's this guy that partially bulldozed a buffer zone and a wetland partially. I had John Zimmer go out there and we told him to submit an after the fact RDA. He never did. So that guy can definitely catch up on. This guy moved. So like, you know, I don't know how you guys want to kind of keep track of these. Do you want me to just quarterly put this on a light agenda, or do you guys have any other types of suggestions on how I can keep track of this stuff? What do you guys think?
This is Valer. This is Valer. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
this is Valerio. Sorry, if you wanted, I mean, I would absolutely defer to you, Charlotte, because you're doing the sort of administrative and actual work here. But if you added a column where you put a priority number next to each project, and then you could, you know, you could sort by the highest priority, and then
Okay.
you would know to go and check on those. But what I mean, I would absolutely defer. I'm not trying to create more process to get
No,
in the
I think
way of
that's
what you're
great.
doing, but then you could just sort by that column with that, you know, sort by values function in Excel
Yeah.
or Google Sheets.
Okay.
That way, yeah.
No, I like that idea, because then I think for all of us, I think it'd be good to prioritize which ones might be more important, like especially if somebody filled in a wetland versus if someone cut down a tree. So yeah, definitely open to making some sort of scale, maybe like 1, 2, or 3, low, medium, or high. And you know, maybe we can go through this at some point and kind of, I don't know if you want to do that now, because I know we're trying to get through the items, or we could maybe do it at a following meeting where we label 1, 2, 3, and then I can kind of, you know, prioritize those. Because this list is just going to keep getting bigger. And yes, there's going to be items that close, but then, like I said, I would still recommend keeping them on the list. So obviously, if we see the same names, the same addresses, maybe we resort to higher enforcement or fines, especially for the same people who keep showing up. But yeah, I like that idea. And then, did you guys want me
you
to
could
add
also-
contractor? Sorry, do you guys want me to add the name of
Yes.
the contractor?
Yes,
I think we should
contractor.
Definitely keep track of the contractor.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Is how old it is like super relevant too for you, Charlotte?
I'll defer to you guys, because like I said, these are the only ones, these first 4 that I had no idea what these were. These were on the list when I got here. But I know this one pretty well. This one, you'll love this one, Gus. Long story short, this person, anytime you see this person's name on anything, I hate to say it, you're going to see some stuff. So this is a stormwater permit violation for someone who basically clear cut, did a bunch of paving, cut a bunch of trees. It's been sold and it's I think somebody else is renting it for now, but the fines have been paid because this went through like 2 years of fines. The only thing that's left is pending completion of a stormwater permit, which was after the fact. There's unfortunately no time parameters for us to enforce. The town was potentially looking to foreclose this, but I don't think that's happening anymore. And other potential private developers are looking at it. But I think like every 3 to 6 months, I get a new lawyer contacting me about this. The last update was someone tried to close this for the original property owner in 2022. And I said no, because none of the work was done and half the trees he planted were all dead. So we didn't do anything with this, and it's just sat ever since January 2022. So this one is like, even though this one is really old, I'm still kind of keeping it on my radar, and I'm, you know, obviously not forgetting about it. I know this address very well. So I don't know if it gets a high priority, but based on age, I think it might maybe get a middle priority just because it's been for so long. But the problem is I can't speed the process up. We could just occasionally write them letters and say you haven't done the work, but we don't have any time.
The only reason I mentioned the age is because if you're using Excel, you can just put in a little formula to take today's date and subtract the days from when it was done, and then you always have that just
like
pop up. Yeah,
okay, so
like it would
like
just be there for
track,
you.
like timestamp.
Yeah, like you know, whatever today's date is minus that many days, it would just be there for you to know. It's up to you though. I mean, I don't want to create more administrative overhead for you, just if that would be useful or not.
Yeah. Trying to think of what to call that category, like days since violation.
Yeah, if it doesn't make sense, ignore it. It's just a suggestion. Don't worry about it. But yeah.
I for the rest of the commission, I think that's a good suggestion too. Do you guys want to kind of keep track of how old these violations are? Right now, I just put in the year. Hold on. Actually, no, I didn't. It's really just a file number so you guys can tell how old some of these are. But do you guys want me to put like,
Sure.
yeah, I'll think of a category for that.
Just put date. You can just put date of violation or date of filing,
Yeah.
and then sort by date.
Okay.
Just to
There is a date of incident. We already have it.
Oh, I do have it?
Yeah, it's H.
Oh, I do have it. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
yeah.
Oops.
Sort.
So
More
yeah,
to-
I can do like an equation, and then just do a minus today, and then we can see how long it's been. Oh.
Yeah, just sort. Just
Yeah,
goes-
oh, you could sort it too. I'll make the dates more consistent so we can sort by date. Because some of these I don't have the exact date, like I don't know when these happened. I could just write June 1st just to make it simple, but yeah, okay, so I can do that. I'll just make a note to update that. But do you guys kind of like that idea of kind of just periodically adding this to an agenda and kind of just going through it with updates that I have for you guys, or anything that you guys
Yes.
need to follow up on?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
that was mostly it.
Is the color coding for like first violation versus,
Oh, I'm sorry. The green means it's completed, and then yellow just means pending. So I didn't highlight the whole row just to not give everyone a headache, but I highlighted the address and then the current status. So stuff that I'm waiting on, I just highlighted it in yellow. And then when everything's done, I'll just highlight the whole row in green. So I'm happy to maybe for number 1 priority, maybe the whole thing could be like red or something. I could make an equation for that.
Isn't there one that dates from 2015?
Yep. Hold on. There's a few actually. So there's this one, but that one was multiple
Why are
permits.
these hanging out for so
I like
long?
that.
Is there some common thread here why
Uh,
they've been or being ignored?
That's a good question. Like this one, for example, was 5 years where he got a permit, did something illegal, had to get another permit. So this is like almost a
Remember that.
10-year time frame, and then we're only waiting on the COC to be done, Yeah, I don't know. A lot of these are this second half of the thing is these are all my recent violations, but yeah, I don't know why some of these have sat around for so long. So again, these first 4 on the list, this one I know about, but these first 3, well, the 2 that are still open, I have no idea why these have been never followed. This was the big one, Chris. I think you remember this one. This is the filling of the wetlands.
Yeah.
Probably the most egregious violation existing on this.
Yeah,
So
I have no
what
idea what
status
the
is.
status is there.
No, I think
Yeah.
that, yeah. I think this one might be a higher priority because the plantings were supposed to be done like 4 years ago. He does have an open permit for, I think that was the horse barn. So that's why there's a 2108. So this has just been a series of multiple notices of intent after the fact, enforcement orders, fines. Yeah, this is probably the most egregious one on the list. But yeah, I can definitely check in on the status of this because I would say this one of the oldest violations is probably our,
Yep.
I don't know, can highlight it in red or something. Give it priority level 1. But other than that, the rest of these are pretty much waiting on permits to be completed, except for one person who never submitted an after the fact RDA for the damage he did to the buffer zone. So this one I could highlight in red and follow up on him and send him a letter. We didn't give him a time frame, unfortunately, but and then a lot of these are just pending permits to be completed. Some of these people may never submit something, like, the guy on Border Street, he may never submit an NOI and he may just stop doing the work. But yeah, a lot of these I see are pending completion. The Beechwood Street guy, I'm all over that, so I'm just waiting. Some of these are probably going to be open for years based on mitigation, planting stuff and reporting. Yeah. But yeah, you guys feel free to take a look at this and let me know if you ever have suggestions on how I can keep track of all the stuff that'll just keep getting bigger. Okay. That was it. That was also just having that conversation on enforcement strategies and keeping track of the tracker. Does anyone else have any other suggestions on violations, enforcement, anything I can do?
Charlotte, all I would say is, try to look at the schedule for the coming year and just
Yeah.
like every quarter, just put it on the agenda.
Okay.
We'll push off you know, on whatever night that is, you know, limit the number of applications to 5 or something like that, and then,
Okay.
you know, put that kind of thing every quarter so that we can look at it.
Perfect. All right, on to the next item. This one's just a very short discussion. COCs. I don't know how you guys want me to do these. I'm trying to like make these more efficient, but unfortunately what we're seeing is so many violations and deviations, and it's like, what do we do? I mean, it's like 10 o'clock at night, we're looking at these things and I'm just reading through the violations, and then it turns into, you know, a big discussion and an important one at that. So I guess if I find a lot of deviations, like, is there something that you guys would like me to do of just immediately like put it on for a show cause hearing and push it down the agenda and make them wait or something? Like, that's really all I can do. Technically, the regulations are I'm supposed to process these in 21 days. I cannot do that with the amount of COCs I sometimes get. No, luckily no one's complained. I don't think I don't think the commission is liable. Like, if we don't act in 21 days, I don't think that means they get an automatic COC, but I don't know if I want to open that can of worms and find out.
You did open a show cause, then wouldn't that change that whole,
It kind of, yeah, if the applicant acknowledges they need a show cause, yeah. I don't know what the repercussions are if I don't process these quickly.
I
But
think you better-
technically,
I think you should find out.
yeah, we're supposed to make a
Counsel.
decision in 21 days. And that's often not what happens, because obviously we need stuff to be done and the applicant is willing to comply, so that's why we push them off.
Ask council what remedies we have.
Okay,
So-
Yeah.
So if there is a way of kicking the can down the road, we do have people that are urgently want a COC.
Yeah.
A new house that's been constructed and they want to get it on the market,
mm-hmm.
and then they'll come to us, you know, in a big hurry. And-
Yeah, I'm not doing that anymore because I am pushing back on these people myself, because I found that the more I'm rushed, the more things I'm likely to miss. And I'm glad that I have you guys who can catch certain things, but I don't like missing things. And, you know, that doesn't make me feel good. And I don't think that's fair to commissioners to rush these just because someone's trying to push a housing sale. So I'm personally just pushing back on people, and I'm saying, no, I'm not going to put you on an agenda. You've submitted this 2 days before. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just saying you're going to go to the
Yeah.
next agenda. So I'm doing my best, but you know how pushy sometimes people are, and it's just, yeah. But I always tell people I can put it on an agenda, but I can't guarantee that we're going to get to them. And I can't guarantee you're going to get a COC, especially when you have 9 deviations. So, you know, that's where they kind of have no choice. But I definitely want to make sure you guys have enough time to look at these. I'll be honest, I cannot do my COC reports a week in advance. So you guys should definitely check the day of, because I will be putting, you know, my site visit reports and my deviation reports in there, my site photos. So that's what I would always recommend for COCs. Just look at them before the meeting, maybe last minute. I know that's might be a little bit of an ask for a lot of you guys who are, you know, working 9 to 5 jobs, but that's all I can do. I can't prepare these a week in advance because I'm already struggling to get people to submit their documents a week in advance. So COCs
Is
are
there
kind
any
of a
way we
last
can
minute
change
thing.
our bylaws?
We could.
To say for a COC, we require a longer lead time.
Yeah, could do that.
And yeah, and like Tom said, I think you should ask council about if you, when you do your site visit, if there's an egregious alteration,
Mhm.
like to switch it to a show cause, if that would give us more time, and I think it should.
Yeah.
So
Good idea.
it seems like it'd be a contradiction if we required a 30-day prior notice. When does the 21 days kick in? So see if council can figure out a workaround for this, so that
Okay.
we don't get these things shoved down our throat, because some of them have taken a long time.
hmm
And
Yeah.
And as you say, it happens late at night. None of us really have the patience.
I don't. Yeah.
By
So
that time of night to go through all these everything from minor changes to major changes. And I think they're counting on us to just sort of rubber stamp these things.
Mhm.
So let's figure out how we can stretch it out, maybe require a 30-day notice and figure out when that 21-day notice starts to tick.
Yeah. I think it's upon receipt, unfortunately.
Well, that's so. maybe- So. Yeah,
But what we could do, I think if we're bound by the 21-day time frame, I think what we could do is I can still do my report. You guys can quickly look at it. The commission can vote to just deny the COC straight up and just say, you need to give us more information. So not continue, just deny. And I think that'll eventually maybe give people the message that when you do all this stuff, we're going to deny you up front until you come back for a show cause hearing and discuss it. And maybe even reapply and make them pay the fine twice. So that would be the other, I think if we're bound by that 21-day requirement under the act, I think we just deny them up front and say the work's not in compliance. And if they want to fight it, they can fight it in court. And then, you know, we'd have DEP and our bylaws protecting us and the order that they may not have followed. But that's the hard way. I think if there's an easier way for us to do it, to, you know, I'll talk to council. So I'll table that discussion and I'll update you guys.
Thank you.
All right, so it's officially 9 o'clock. There's technically 2 things on the list, but obviously 2 and 1 in multiple parts. So do you guys, I think this is a document you guys are going to need more time to look at, but over the last year, we've been making a submission checklist. I'll pull it up real quickly. I just redid it all because I'm really trying to make this an easy read document, but there's so much information from our regulations that it's almost impossible for me to write this very succinctly. So I am open to suggestions. I made a section for a general application section. I made one for each type of permit submission, and then I have an appendix with more information. And so a lot of this is copy and paste right from the regulations, but I tried to reword it to make it very brief. So I made this a clickable checklist that, you know, commissioners and applicants can use to complete their applications. And I can, as part of my review, the discussions we previously had was I go through this checklist each time. I put this checklist in OneDrive for you guys. If you guys see that it's missing critical documents, I can either continue it right before the hearing and tell the applicant your submission is not complete. And if the applicant insists on being heard and doesn't sign a 21-day waiver, then the commission can tell them, per the checklist, you didn't complete all this. So we can use this as a guide to kind of make sure that under the regulations that we have, that they're following all of this information. Because as you can see, for an RDA, this is quite a lot of information. And an NOI is twice the length. So this is just for an RDA of what they need to submit. And there's always a note that the commission can always require more information. And so these are the categories that I would really love feedback on, because these are things from me. These are not a part of the regulations. These are things that I think are really helpful for submissions. So I made one for each category of submission. So I would love feedback on that. But yeah, as you can see, this is a very long document that I would love to give you guys more time on, obviously, unless you have some immediate comments for me now. But yeah, this recommendation section for each type of submission, I would love feedback on it of how these submissions can be more helpful to you guys. As you can see, this is a site plan just for an NOI. This is all the stuff that's required under our regulations. I'm sorry, this is the recommendations of everything we've asked, but then the requirements here are quite extensive, you know? Stormwater is even worse. Stormwater is like 3 pages. So is this something you guys want to table to March?
yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Okay. Unless, did anyone look at it right now and do you guys have any immediate edits for me? No? Okay. All right. All right. Last but not least, regulations. So I just want to open up the floor for you guys because I highlighted a couple sections that have come up very frequently recently and for almost every project, especially with variances. So I came up with some suggested edits for the variances. I don't think we can vote on it, but we can definitely provide input. And then I came up with just some suggestions of how we could improve these sections. So these were my thoughts here. I think variances are probably where we hold a lot of power. And unfortunately, our section is not very well defined, and it's turned into, oh, this is rare and unusual. And it's like, no, it's not. So I think we really need to define rare and unusual. I don't know if we want to define adverse. So this was like my rough definition, and I'll obviously give you guys time to read this as I'm talking, but I think when you have a clear definition of what a rare and unusual circumstance actually is, maybe half of these projects that come before us with a variance request won't even qualify. And then my second thought was, I think we should have eligibility criteria, so I put them here. I'll just stay on this language right now, but we only had 2 criteria in the current regulations, so I tried to maybe strengthen that a little bit, and obviously your input would be very much appreciated. So I think variances are really where we call the shots, and if we're going to give variances, they have to meet stricter standards, because we're already strict with no adverse impact, but then we don't really define, a lot of that. So
Maybe by
open it up, open the floor.
So maybe by going through the exercise of trying to define them, will define the limits of what we think our jurisdiction extends to. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
So yeah, this looks like it's fairly involved. So obviously this is deferred to March.
Yeah, I figured you guys might need more time.
That's not to say that as we can be working on it as it's going on, like we did with these others, and when you find time, dive into it maybe and suggest some edits or whatever. But as a group, I think we'll revisit this in March.
Okay. But yeah, does anyone have any thoughts on variance requests right now that I can just add to this like little thought list? Like, does this cover everything that we want, or do you guys have any thoughts on variances? Because variances are not just work within the 50-foot buffer. The variance could be eventually for the use of herbicides. It could be for greater than 1,000 square feet of a resource area. So yeah, there's a lot to think of. So it's pretty much a variance from anything in our regulations, except for stuff that specifically says a variance will never be given. There's certain standards that, like, I think, for example, new development in the 100-foot inner riparian area is not allowed under any circumstances in our regulations. And then I think something about vernal pools we don't allow under any circumstances we don't allow variances for that. So other than some of that stuff in the regulations, technically the most common variance we give is the 50-foot buffer, but there are other variances that people sometimes ask for. So yeah, I think I'll turn
Fairly
it
involved, and
over.
I don't know that I'm certainly not ready to
That's okay.
Add any bullet points to this. I want to look at it.
Okay. Yeah, my one last thought was alternatives. I think kind of like Riverfront, where you need to see a scope of alternatives. I think for a variance request, like if they want it, they got to critically think through it. And we've already asked that for them to consider and draw sketches and alternatives, and maybe we can elaborate on that in the variance request. But I think if someone's asking for a variance, especially to work within the 50-foot buffer, they got to go through the alternatives and prove to us why those options are not feasible and why we'd allow a variance here. So, okay. And then I'll just, so that's variances. And then again, I added, this is just draft language. I have not really seriously thought this over, but I thought defining this, adding criteria, and then just adding a note that the commission in its discretion may require additional documents. And I think that can cover ourselves, and then we could list them, or we could just keep it general, but I'll leave that to you guys to look at for March. And then this is the other one I know we're gonna have to brainstorm on. There is a section in the rules and regulations that goes about, describes maintenance activities, but I think it's extremely confusing because like sometimes defining those activities, I don't know if it implies that that's allowed or not allowed. So like clear cutting is a pretty obvious one, but then there's stuff like corridor, like clearing. I'm like, what? And then there's stuff like topping trees. And so I definitely wanted to kind of go through this in more detail since I get a lot of landscape questions. And my general guidance, just that you guys are aware, if someone is hand pruning or cutting a tree or a shrub I'm okay with that as long as the work is done in a manner that doesn't harm the tree. So that's what I've been telling every arborist, every contractor. I said, just have to go through me when it's in the buffer zone and when you're under an order of conditions, because that is covered under our template that all prior approvals have to be discussed with the commission and or the agent with cutting. So I definitely tell people when it's a pruning thing, that's one thing. But then again, any harmful cutting of a tree, like cutting off a leader, topping a tree, you know, doing whatever to a tree that would damage it, that is not allowed without a permit. So I'm trying to kind of come up with do's and don'ts for everybody. And I would love, of course, your input of what you guys think is acceptable versus not acceptable. Because I'm the one who enforces this section pretty much like every single day. So the clearer it is, I think the more helpful it will be for you guys, for us, and then for applicants and residents. Because someone literally said, do I need a permit to pull out a weed, you know? So, yeah, I think making the section clearer. And then I haven't done this yet, but these are some of the towns that have pretty descriptive vegetation guidelines. Dedham is definitely one of them. Canton is also one of them. I haven't looked at Easton's yet, but there's a really experienced agent who works there. I don't know about Duxbury and Hingham, but we often do pull from each other's regulations. Some of our language they've taken from us, some of our language we've incorporated from their stuff. So if you guys have any other towns you want me to look at that you're aware of, I'm happy to research it more. But yeah, any other thoughts on this one, guys? On like kind of landscaping activities overall?
And it's another one of those that's going to require just a little bit more homework, I think, Shirley.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's okay. I'm I'm opening the floor for you guys, whatever you want to
I'm
discuss.
talking about homework on our part.
Yeah.
You've laid out the contours of what you think we need. And
Mhm.
so it's our responsibility now to look at that and accept
Okay.
it or adjust or whatever. So,
Okay. Yeah, I can make this document edit, you know, you guys can edit this. So you guys are all welcome to edit this in OneDrive and add your thoughts. And it can be kind of like I can't do a Google Doc, unfortunately, because security won't allow me to do it, but at least in OneDrive, you guys can all edit the document. So I'll put this in your folder to edit. And then
Okay.
obviously, last but not least, we've all talked about this, but as you've seen most recently, someone's already presented a proposal to use herbicides. So now is the time to update this section on what we want. I thought, again, defining things from the start is a good idea because we've explained to people before, someone thought it was okay to spray like a salt and vinegar mixture and kill everything in a buffer zone. And we're like, it doesn't matter. That's an herbicide. Then of course, coming up with projects might be allowed under a variance, like restoration projects. And then I definitely wanted to reference the sections in the Wetlands Protection Act that I've already looked at for a similar project you guys saw last week. You know, again, restoration versus enhancement projects where someone's just planting natives versus someone who's restoring something they damaged. Looking at other laws. I've already gotten a verbal confirmation from either Brad and or John that they're happy to help us out with looking at edits, and John actually offered his services for free if we were open to that. So, you know, I do have some support from our local wetlands people if we wanted their input.
we definitely do. I mean,
Yeah.
You know, they do have a dog in the fight, but on the other
Yeah.
hand, I think when we're talking about rather than specific projects, when we're talking in general, they can probably give us some
Mhm.
notion of what if we're something that's not generally feasible.
Yeah.
They're gonna warn us about that. Then
Yeah.
it's up to us then to decide whether we're going to accept their advice or not. But
Yeah.
I think it's a good idea to involve our local experts in this.
Okay. Yeah.
Well,
No, I
they're-
think yeah.
Their plan should be based on some other guideline.
Yes.
I mean, it's not like they went to school and they learned something and then that's all they do. I mean, I would think that in either case, they're following some kind of guideline. Although
Yeah.
I might suggest that sometimes it seems like it's awfully an awful light guideline, that's for sure.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah, I was told to look at Marshfield's because Marshfield apparently recently redid it. And John Zimmer said there are things that I support it about it and things that I do not support. And he said he's happy to go through that with me when I revise the regulations. So he told me to look at Marshfield. He did also say the same towns as above, like definitely look at some of these. But yeah, if anybody has any other towns, I think Brookline maybe has some standards, but I don't know how good those are. But that's also an inland city. I was trying to kind of target, you know, coastal stuff. And even though these are inland, they have really strict standards. So it's always good to look at what the higher standards are. But yeah, and then same thing, alternative analysis, you know, like critically thinking through, do we need to use herbicides if we're going to grant a variance? So a lot of this falls under even the variance standards, not even, you know, but yeah, I think the clearer this section is on what is allowed under certain circumstances would be really helpful for applicants. But yeah, it is going to require a lot of documentation. I know these projects are going to be expensive, but I think for people who really want to do it, I think they'll invest the time because these projects are extremely time extensive. So you have to be 5 years invested at the least in types of projects, you know, so someone has to go big or go home either way with this work. You can't just half-ass this. It'll just go right back. We saw that with somebody on Howard Gleason. So, yeah. All right. Any other regulations you guys want me? I did put just a general, anything else bullet, but are there any sections in the regulations that we should prioritize? These were the three that I was thinking of, but you know, of course, if you guys have any other sections that you really want to see redone, you can prioritize those for March.
I think we'll let you know.
Yeah,
Okay.
We'll take a look.
Okay. All right. Maybe I'll just do other sections. Here we go. All right. That
Charlotte?
is, yeah.
Could I ask a question? The
Yes.
submission checklist that
Mhm.
you had gone through, is that on OneDrive? Because I saw the folder for it, but
Yes,
I
I'm
opened it
sorry,
up.
Kathy. I put it in yesterday.
Okay. Oh, was it? Oh, I thought I
Actually, I
looked
put it in
today.
this morning. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's all right. I thought it's just one, it's there. Okay.
Yeah, I will make that
okay.
folder that I just made. I'll put everything in there and I'll share the link with you guys before I
Yeah,
log off
okay.
tonight.
No problem.
Yeah, sorry, Kathy. I know you looked
It's
at
okay.
things in advance. I appreciate that, but
That's okay.
I'm sorry I didn't get the checklist
It's
done. I
okay.
ended up redoing the whole thing because it was too long. I cut down like 5 pages and it's still extremely long.
No problem. Thanks for all the work you did.
Thank you. But yeah, anything else, guys? I think we did pretty well with 2 hours.
You did.
Yep.
Thanks, Charlotte. Nice work putting all that together.
Thanks. No, I appreciate it, guys. Thank you for all the feedback.
So with that said, I'm going to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Awesome.
Great
Have
holiday.
a wonderful
party.
holiday and New Year, guys. We'll see you in January.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Don't we
Take
have
care,
something
bye.
next week?
No, nothing. We canceled our meeting, Kathy.
I'm way behind.